Dave Wiesdock, Sage of Creative Scaffolding.
And I'm Jenn West, Professional Rebel of Delight.
And this is Shadowcasting.
Hey Dave, what's our quote of the day?
Yeah, so the quote of the day is from Lao-Tzu. It's, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And then I have a supplement quote from that from Swami Nanda or Swami Vivekananda. And we're not quite sure on which way to pronounce it. So if one of our listeners has a more insightful way on correctly attributing this quote, please let us know in the show comments. And it's, we are what our thoughts have made us. So take care about what you think. Words are secondary. Thoughts live. They travel far.
I love those quotes. They're so fun.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think, again, I really honed in on these quotes because a large part of what I think I want to bring to this podcast, at least, is the idea of kind of personal responsibility. You know, there's so many podcasts out there that give people this breadth of knowledge, whether it's about archetypes or MBTI or Enneagram or leadership or business. And I think where our podcast kind of uniquely sits is it's like, okay, we're not going to necessarily speak at you. This podcast is more about giving you kind of insight into how you as like an individual want to interact in the world. You know, it's about awakening kind of your inner knowing. And so that's where I was going with this, you know, building this awareness around how you present yourself, how you interact in the world, because you are the creator of your reality. And a lot of people miss the steps that get you to that point. They're kind of at the end result where they see something happening to around them and they want to label it as good or bad or right or wrong. And I think what really needs to happen and what these quotes really become powerful is that, you know, maybe this situation might bring up an archetype that you can work with. And I can't use these archetypes as an excuse. You know, those are built into me. And so I need to, instead of going outward with that, go inward, you know, work on the hardwiring within, kind of go to those deeper levels. And it really starts with kind of like the Lao-Tzu quote with the thoughts. In psychology, especially when you're talking about different types of therapies and stuff and people considering action, you know, there's the action part, of course, but then there's parts before that, before the action really takes place, like the contemplation stage, the pre-contemplation stage. And I think that kind of plays with this, where it peel back the layers of it and really go to kind of that centerpiece within us, which is, in this case, thoughts.
We can also take it backwards as well at who are you right now? What's the character that you have in your body? And then what habits have you been doing that created that character that you are? What actions do you take that created that habit? And it's really hard to go backwards through time, back to that original thought that set all of this into motion. And the thought is the powerhouse. And if you want to change your character or modify yourself, it goes all the way back to, what do I think about most of the time?
Right. Yeah. Actually, that's a really, see, exactly. You didn't just start doing this action out of nothing. Right? It was a combination and accumulation of your thoughts and your words over time that built towards that action, kind of solidifies it as a habit. So like you said, starting with who you are and what character you're interacting as.
Yeah. And now that I think about that, that's probably the hardest part to get. How do you know what your character is? And a lot of our habits are completely unconscious. So maybe it is that we need to go back and just start paying attention to what thoughts am I thinking? And what words then do I say to people? And then what actions do I take based off of those thoughts? And then that develops into the habit and we start to notice, oh, I've got these weird habits that I wasn't even aware of because I think this way and then I act that way.
Right. Oh, here's a great analogy. Well, I don't know about a great analogy. Here's an analogy that I think kind of simplifies it. It's like me with physical movement. You and I talk about taking action and doing the thing or whatever the thing is. And I keep telling you, okay, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. I want to do this thing, right? And so really what I've created as the action is not the doing. It's the want of the doing, because that's the thought. I don't wake up and go, I am a person that does movement. I go, I am a person that wants to do movement. So my habit has become somebody that wants to do something rather than the actual doing.
Yeah, no, that one's huge, because just the realization that there's an extra word in your thought, the want, doesn't actually activate the motivation to do the thing you want to do.
And I think that's kind of where Lao-Tzu is getting at it, right? Because the thought of wanting to do something isn't what builds to the action. There's an in-between. Just like you said, it's the word. And the word of action is want. And so I'm creating an action of want. I'm creating an action of lack. I am building a habit that says I actively lack physical movement. I actively lack action. And it's until I am kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier with that pre-contemplation, contemplation, action stage, until I am willing to be into a space of pre-contemplation without lack, I'm not going to have change in my life.
Right. That makes so much sense. You got to get rid of the want and be like, I am a mover.
Yeah.
And so what movement am I taking together today? And then all of a sudden, just those mentally thinking about being a mover and then taking an action, all of a sudden you become the mover and you have a new identity. You have that new character trait inside of you.
Exactly. And I can hear some people listening to this podcast going, well, that's so much easier said than done. But if you really look at your life, you still take actions every day. So pick an action that maybe isn't so emotionally charged. For some people, going to the gym is tough, or eating healthy is hard. So don't pick that as the action. Pick something like taking a shower every day, something that for a lot of people is second nature, right? What thoughts and actions lead to that? It's not, I want to take a shower. It's, hey, I woke up or I just exercised and I need to shower. There's no lack there. It's just the action needs to happen. And finding something like that and kind of creating that as your comparison, I think might help people kind of realize that, it really does come down to the word choice. And we can't control our thoughts, but what we can do is we can control how we interact with our thoughts. If I keep having the thought, like, for example, of I want to exercise or I want to be involved in physical movement, maybe I could change that or pivot that. What is a simple action like taking a shower, something that is, so rote in my action that maybe could tie to that? You kind of get into this idea of, I think they call it like coupling, right? So you pick something that you already do or something that's easier for you to do, and you couple that with something that you're maybe struggling with, or maybe that action isn't where you want it to be. So it's like, okay, like I know I can take a shower and maybe I can do 5 minutes of Tai Chi with that beforehand or after if I want, whichever, it doesn't matter. You're just coupling something that I almost said that you want to do, that you're working on becoming or that you are actively cultivating in your life. And then you're coupling that with something that's already a cue in your brain of not lack, like taking a shower. And so you start to build this pattern around your thoughts, and your words start to shift with that, because now it's no longer, I want to be somebody in movement. It's okay, I know I need to take a shower. And so before I take my shower, I'm doing 5 minutes Tai Chi. And already there, you've like shifted your words. And then what's going to happen is, as you shift your words and your actions, this isn't a one-way, it might be linear, but it's definitely not one way, right? So if I'm changing my words and my actions, that's going to affect my thoughts. And so then you start to create this momentum and this consistency.
Well, and I think just where you were saying taking a shower and putting together Tai Chi, and then you caught yourself, you realized you wanted to say, I want to. And that's step one, where you start to notice your thoughts, those unconscious things that just happen to you. And you start to just pay attention and you notice over and over where you keep catching yourself, and it becomes uncomfortable for a while. Oh my gosh, how often do I say I want versus I'm doing, or this is the action I'm taking right now? Because the I want is I'm going out into the future of that thing. Right. But really, it's, no, this is me now. And getting in the shower, you don't even really think about it. It's like, oh, the alarm went up, time to take a shower.
Just kind of playing with that second quote a bit too, especially that second part about words are secondary, because we're kind of even focusing on that word part. And it's just because it's secondary doesn't mean that it's not important. And the idea is that, yes, the thoughts are kind of the predecessor to everything. And so you've got to really ground yourself in this 3-step process, right? We're not even talking about later down the line about like character and habit. We're just really focusing on these first 3 piecemeal parts and how pivotal they are, because it's true. The thoughts are, let me rephrase. Your habits are your thoughts manifested or alive, right? So everything we're doing in our life is a manifestation of the thoughts that we have by some form or fashion. So, they really do travel far, as that quote says. I'm hoping as we continue this podcast that we can talk about things like non-judgment and personal responsibility and leaning into play. That's the other thing too. Every time I listen to some of these podcasts, it's so serious and so somber. You've got to change your action. And we were just talking about like coupling ideas and, make it fun. If Tai Chi isn't your thing, but you want to be more involved in movement, find a fun movement, something that you enjoy. If it's learning how to squat again or doing a handstand before, pick something that you're going to be excited about. Even if every day you don't have that motivation, you knew at some point that there was a thought of excitement, and that's what you're trying to create. That's the pathway that you're trying to build in your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It is all about the fun and finding the passion in the thing you're doing, even if it's hard. If you think about back when you were a kid, you just jumped into life and it was hard and you couldn't do it. And part of the fun was not being able to do it. And I think that's what this entire podcast is going to be about. How do you lean into the fun of it?
And just another thought I had too is that then, see, here's the really cool thing of why I love this quote. This is why I love this quote, because the beauty of this is that as you start to create a supportive atmosphere for yourself, it doesn't stay in isolation. Then you're at work one day and you're like, oh, there's this really cool project I've wanted to try. How do I fail at that? How do I have fun with that? Or trying to parent a kid. This is how I've been doing it my whole life. This is how my parents raised me, but it's not working with my kid. How do I change that? What does that look like? So as your thoughts starts to change in one area, it's going to bleed into the other areas. Just like this quote says, thoughts travel far. It doesn't stay in a linear path into one thing that you're working on. It starts to bleed into everything else. And if that isn't shadow casting, I don't know what is.
Yeah, same. I feel the same. And I'd like to know from any of the listeners, what's something you're trying to play with that's been stressful and strong, and you've been looking at the habit itself instead of the thoughts and the words. I mean, what are you working on? And what do you want to bring into this idea of thoughts and words and actions to habits to character? Where are you coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really curious to see what people have to share with that.
Give us any feedback on this particular quote, things you've seen, things you know. We'd love to hear more.
And thanks for listening.
See you next time.